Namaste, good evening. I am Manashwi Karki, and welcome back to Advancing Optometry Education 2021, a virtual conference at your home, which is being organized with the support of Tilganga Institute of Ophthalmology, Himalayan Eye Hospital, and Matrika Eye Center. Our platinum sponsors, Vaishnav Medicels Private Limited, and our gold sponsors are Topcon and Nidec. Similarly, our silver sponsor is Bosch and Lomb, and our bronze sponsor is Silver Line. So in this segment, we have 5 distinguished professionals, ophthalmologists and optometrists who will be talking about specialty practice in eye care. And we will be covering a wide range of topics.
So I want to thank the organizers of the meeting and everybody involved and everybody staying late for this last session. It's wonderful to be back with you as well as during this COVID time, we had a time to share a little bit more at length. I have 2 presentations, one today and one tomorrow. Both are interesting. I find them interesting, and they're on topics that we're currently doing research on at Southern College of Optometry. So today's topic, and I'm going to start my little timer because I can't actually use the time to make sure. There we go. So Melbourne Rapid Fields, or MRF, and what I've been working on is both tablet and home-based versions or implementations of this. So we know current visual field testing, there are some significant limits. Many of us have used the HFA, the Humphrey Field Analyzer, for years. We know that the standard devices like this are fairly expensive. They take up a great deal of space. To really get the optimum out of a standard HFA or device like this, you really need an experienced technician to get trustworthy data. You can't just have anybody turn it on, walk away, and hope you're going to get a good feel. Proper sterilization between uses takes a significant amount of time, particularly because of the bowl, and now with, again, COVID-19 still running wild. This is a concern that we need to watch for. And these types of tests must be done in the office, which requires a visit. And if we're trying to limit our contact time with our patients, it would be difficult to do that. So the potential benefits of the MRF tablet would be, it's a much more open experience. I'm going to show you pictures of it and how it works. It's much, much easier to administer. Very much like, by the way, doing an HFA, what we found is that although to a lesser degree, it's been said over and over that 80% of all the learning of how to take a visual field occurs the first time you take a field. Then the patient gets better and better, and then they become pretty good at doing it. We're finding even without prior experience, we're getting some people that are very good at taking this. Now, of course, we haven't yet moved so much to a clinic population. And of course, all of our students at Southern College of Optometry have lots of experience doing these kinds of tests. Tablet-based tests or even computer-based tests need a lot less space than the bowl. It doesn't need a dedicated room. So it's much more flexible in terms of where the testing can be done. And we can allow the progression analysis to be done directly in the MRF software. The home version, which I want to emphasize here, can be done on a regular basis or even on demand if progression is seen. So this is a relatively new idea that we can manage from the office when we ask a a patient of ours to do a visual field at home. And we have ways to calibrate the screen. I can show you. We have ways to make sure that the brightnesses are correct. It just needs to be done in a relatively dimly lit room. Although I sent my students home, didn't give many instructions about light levels. We got an app on their phone so that they could measure the amount of light, ambient light bouncing off. And turns out there's a lot of myths about visual field testing. And we'll go through some of those. So, and you can also have a small bit of source of income which does not consume office appointment time or staff resources. Certainly you would manage and review a field when it comes in. Patient does a field at home, you get an email, they've done a field, so you have a reminder. You don't have to just keep randomly checking. So the original work on the Melbourne Rapid Fields, Algis Vingras, who's just recently retired from Melbourne University, the optometry school there, and George Kong, the ophthalmologist. The two of them are a wonderful, wonderful team. Now, M&S Technologies in the United States purchased outright the MRF system. And I want to thank Chris Johnson, PhD. He's also the developer of frequency doubling technology. And he also has just retired, is now the former director of the Iowa Reading Center for Visual Fields. Chris and I are consultants to M&S Technologies, and we've been working in the background on modifying a lot of the original MRF code, algorithms, and user interface to be more friendly. So this was the visual field testing center that Chris Johnson was working in. So this is a little picture of the MRF tablet. We're currently using the Microsoft Surface Pro 3. We've built a little hood around it. This is the office model. And we've been playing with, you can either use the space bar as the response key, but we also have a little push button that people have been using as well. The basic target is this. We have a target in the center of the screen. I haven't shown the entire screen here. I just wanted you to see what the target looks like. And the way we're able to use a small, relatively small tablet, I mean, that's a relatively small screen. How do we still get the full visual field? Well, what we're going to do, very much like the old Dicon, D-I-C-O-N, which I actually had originally in practice to do my visual fields, very much like that, this target will move during the testing. It's going to be in 5 different places throughout the whole sequence of the testing. It starts in the center for plotting the blind spot for the right eye here, or plotting the blind spot for the left eye over here. But after it plots most of the center of the visual field, it will move down to the lower left-hand corner, and that now gets a lot more real estate for testing here. Then it will move to the lower right corner, so it has a lot of real estate for testing here, and it will do the 4 corners of the screen. And this is an example of that at the different corners, and you get a sense of how that works. So we did a little study, just 60 subjects, 120 eyes. Yes, all of our students, no, I'm kidding. The basic requirement of our students is they must have done a visual field test in the past. And all of them as first or second years get experience doing an HFA. We didn't want the learning effect to alter what we saw. They also must be correctable to 20/20. And really that was all that we were looking for, because we were going to do statistics that looked at matched, the person matched to themselves rather than all the different points across people. And what we did was random order, either Melbourne Rapid Fields or the HFA, but we always did the right eye first, followed by the left eye on either device. 5-minute rest break between eyes, 15-minute rest break between devices so that we weren't fatiguing people. So on 120 eyes, when we did the full range, and this needs to be commented on why you're going to see the difference between this slide and the other. The HFA, because it's using individual light sources and it has a 10 decibel background light, it's able to achieve much higher contrast levels and then much more subtle ones, and you will get thresholds well above 30 decibels on the HFA. On the MRF, because we're using a computer screen, and unless we went to an OLED screen or a very, very bright type of screen, the actual difference in brightness levels is not there to allow us to go higher than 30 decibels of contrast detection of the target. So we're limited in that. Most disease, we're actually looking well below that, so we feel pretty confident. So does Algis and George as well. So what this is doing, the 4 decibel difference about between the two eyes, MRF to HFA, is essentially looking at the entire HFA range. If, however, we make both sets of ranges, we truncate the HFA down to 30 or above. Take anything that was a 36 or a 40 or a 42 and drop it to 30 and then compare straight across. Now we see that our average difference is only just over 2 decibels, right eye, 2.4 decibels, 2.5 decibels on the left eye. These two odd points on both of these carry through all of our research. Part of it is we have points on the MRF that do not correspond to any points on the HFA. The MRF has added 4 additional points at 1.5 degrees. And we probably should pull those 4 points out, but has 4 additional points. And what Chris Johnson did here in the stats was to try to match them to the closest points on the actual HFA. So we wanted to do an effect of lenses on MRF. If we're going to send this home, and we really are looking at the home area, we're not going to have a lot of control over what lens will the person have in front. And if you're all like me, in my own practice over the years, I was in private practice for 30 years. I'm now in my 11th year as a professor at the Optometry School here in Memphis, Tennessee. My staff fretted about having the exact trial lens on for our patients running their visual fields. And to the point that no matter how much I tried to teach them to do spherical equivalents with astigmatism lenses and this kind of thing, what we ended up having was a form where I actually wrote what trial lens should be placed in the field unit for them to run. So we knew we weren't going to be able to send trial lenses home or the exact lenses for their working distance on the home setup. And what we wanted to see was how robust is the visual field to different lenses. So we took 6 subjects, ages 43 to 71, and with the best correction in place, with their habitual RX, not trial lenses. That's how we started. We did just the dominant eye for each person. And then we did this 24-2 with the 4 extra points. We did it again with their habitual, but then we used a Hallberg clip or a Janelli clip over the lens and added +1, +2, +3, +4. So we got, for some of these subjects, a fairly significant amount of blur, and then wanted to see the difference in what happened with the fields. So that you understand this group a little more, This subject number 166, that's me. I just turned 67 actually. But right eye, my regular script is plus 250 minus a half at 95 with a plus 2 add. And I was wearing trifocals inside when doing this. And then over this pair, we put the plus 1, plus 2, plus 3, plus 4. And you get an idea of the other subjects here. And in essence, over this 4 diopter range, this is the average mean deviation on the fields done and grouped by all 6 averaged. And what you see is very, very little change in the mean deviation, particularly until you get to the plus 4 diopters worth of blur, relatively nice, clean standard deviation. So we generally feel that we're not going to say the lens doesn't matter at all, but it doesn't make that much of a difference that you have to be within a minus a quarter diopter or a half diopter. Otherwise, it will mess up the visual fields. Most likely, by the way, that holds for the HFA as well, but we have not studied that, so I would not make that conclusion directly until that particular type of study is done. But we are definitely at Southern College of Optometry, based on this data I'm showing you, we're beginning to move away from the HFA for a number of reasons and replace with a number of these tablets around. And we're implementing, particularly with our next 50 glaucoma patients, this home monitoring. And I'm going to show you that as we go through this. So we did one subject. Again, that was me, where I went from a -6 to a +12 lens. So this is the area that was studied with the 6 subjects, and we can see again the changes in mean deviation. So thinking about it a moment, I think you begin to realize the peripheral receptor fields are actually rather large. And what we're detecting is a change in a system. So it's more of an M cell pathway type of thing that we're actually looking at when we do our visual fields. And we're looking at that kick to on response in those peripheral areas. So we're not actually doing recognition of an optotype. We're not reading anything. It's not high-level contrast. So I think it makes sense that blurring the center, the periphery is already very blurred, that blurring the center doesn't actually affect so much what's happening in the periphery. Certainly, if we saw a patient that had a mean deviation of, say, -0.5, very small, and then it went to -5, we would suspect something had really gone wrong, and we'd want to ask that patient in and do follow-up. But we think the main thing is at home, the patients are going to use the same pair of glasses over and over and over unless they break the pair. And maybe we will have somebody who's a -5 who breaks their pair. We see a difference, and then we have to email them or call them. What happened on that last visual field? Because it looks like, oh, you broke your glasses. Okay. Or, oh, you were wearing the proper glasses. Okay, I need you to come in because maybe something has happened. So I'm just trying to give you a sense of how we're going to use that and look at that. So the next study we did was we did 40 of the MRF tablet. That's the in-office version done on the Microsoft Surface Pro. And then we did home. And we did this in a way to try to also get test-retest data. So we had 40 subjects, 80 total eyes. And what we did was we did the MRF tablet, that's the in-office one, twice, but on 2 successive days. Then, and those were done under our supervision. So the only variable was doing it on a separate day. Now, on the same day they did the second MRF tablet, we did an MRF home, but we did it on our own, not on the Microsoft Surface Pro tablet, but we did it on a standard PC running Windows in a browser. And we showed them how to do the self-calibration. It's really an interesting thing. You take a credit card, put it up onto the screen. There's a little box. You use the plus sign or minus sign to make sure it matches that. We tell them the working distance so that they stay the right distance away from the screen, wear a patch, and do the test. But we did once on our own computer under our own supervision. And then the second MRF Home done the next day, they did on their own computer completely by themselves. Whether they did a computer, a tablet, an iPad, was completely up to them. So first of all, this is the MRF tablet test-retest. Again, the same exact device, two different separate days. And what you see is the right eye essentially was exactly the same. 1 or 2 points, there was a slight bit of variation in those 80 eyes. Left eye, a little more variation. By the way, that's a sort of a quick aside for anybody doing research. Every research I've ever seen, there's more variability in the left eye. There's a wider range of refractive conditions. There's a wider range of, so somebody someday will take that up and look at it. Next, what we looked at was test-retest of the home. Now, let's keep this one in mind, that this is the home done under our supervision in our lab. That's the first test, but the retest is done on their own system that we have no control over. We still have very, very tight concordance, less than 1/5 of a decibel with a relatively tight standard deviation. If I go back to here, it was smaller, but it had fairly wide standard deviation. This has your same standard deviation, very, very close. This was, to us, incredibly inspiring that we felt comfortable. One, MRF, the basic tablet, matches the HFA very closely as long as we look at the truncated values. The MRF correlates to, or our supervised home version correlates very closely to the home version done on just about any system. This was the left eye as well. 1 or 2 points that were a problem, and we will look at that, but still the overall very, very clean, a little bit wider standard deviation in left eye, as I mentioned. So, boy, I didn't calculate how much I could get in 25 minutes. You probably don't have that too often. But I think what I'll do, that actually leaves a little bit of time for some questions. I could have given a lot more background in it, but I want to say that it looks like this kind of testing. One where you would be able to have a tablet in your office rather than the large bowl, that you would be able to do that rather nicely, and that you would also be able to monitor. Here's what we're doing at Southern College of Optometry with our home setup. We're actually asking people to do the home field once a week for the first 4 times. This begets a really wonderful baseline from which we can begin to look at progression at home and have a very clean progression analysis. And then once a month for 3 months, and then once a quarter. So approximately 11 times, or sorry, once every 2 months. And from that point on, they would do it every 2 months or 6 times a year. And that should allow us very nicely to monitor at home and see if there are any subtle changes in fields. The sort of the holy grail in fields is to be able to detect a significant change as early as possible, so that if actual treatment needs to be commenced, we have not wasted too much time getting them in to do that. So according to my stopwatch, I'm a couple of minutes early, but I will stop here, say thank you for the opportunity to share this little bit. I do know there is potentially a slight bit of confusion in Australia. George and Algis are still selling MRF, and it's slightly different. And there is the version that we've been working on, particularly the home, is through M&S Technologies. Again, I'm a consultant, but I have no direct financial interest in the sale of the actual MRF home, MRF. Simply, they pay me for, they don't pay me, they fund research we do at the school, and I do not get any direct things.
Once again, thank you, Dr. Harris, for the wonderful presentation. And
you're welcome.
I'm pretty sure that our audiences had a great learning experience.